Welcome. Nice to see you here. I wanted to, I look at you and I love the narrative that you have started even before, long before the pandemic even. This idea that, you're, to me, the aspiration of a young leader should be thinking about greater diversity. Most recently, you penned a brand new children's book called Ambitious Girl. And I was hoping you could just speak a little bit to your inspiration and why you thought that that book was needed right now.
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you for calling me a young leader. I will take that compliment. So yes, I am the author of Ambitious Girl, and really a lot of things influenced me and inspired me to write the book. But first and foremost, it was really a recognition and an observation that there is a woeful lack of diversity in children's literature. A recent study found that there are more kids' books that have animals as main characters than Black, Latino, Indigenous, and Asian human characters combined. I'm going to say that again. There were more kids' books that had animals than people of color as main characters. And, on the topic of entrepreneurship and just problem solving and deciding that I'm just going to do it myself, I really wrote that book out of frustration, right? I wanted as a new parent, I was really struggling with, my allowing my girls to see themselves on the pages of books, and I wasn't seeing that. And so I wrote the damn book myself. And that was my first book, and Ambitious Girl is my second book. The real influence for Ambitious Girl in particular was really thinking about the power of language. And once again, as a parent of two girls, of two Black children, I know the reality well that they will enter a world and a workforce that tells them, you can be ambitious, but not too ambitious, right? And I really wanted to talk to them early on and make sure that, in our home, we were starting a conversation about the reality of the world, that there are these words and they are very powerful and they are used as weapons to cut down women and girls, to dim their light. But most importantly, to give them the tools and the confidence to reclaim and redefine those words and who they are on their own terms. Something my grandmother used to say, she's very special to me. She was a second mother to me. And she always would say, don't let anyone tell you who you are. You tell them who you are, right? Only you have that power to define who you are and what impact you're going to have on the world and what your ambitions are and what they're going to be. And so that's the opening line of the book. Honestly, I wrote it just as much for my daughters and for kids as I did myself. I still exist as a woman navigating the world in which I am told, simply because I'm living and breathing and have opinions, that I'm to this or to that, right? And it's amazing to see the power of something so simple, right? Let's just talk about the power of language that is wielded in society, in our homes, and certainly in our workplaces. And so that's really what the inspiration was behind the book.
Well, I just personally, I'm going to stop and say thank you. I have two Black daughters as well. And so I agree with you. That is something that I think about constantly, which is they are amazing. And I don't want them to shrink themselves to be small so that they're okay. So that's the only personal thing I'm going to say. Now,
well, I appreciate you saying that, because I want to add one more thing, which is that I wrote it for my daughters, but that book is just as important for white children, for white boys to read, right? To see Black girls leading and living, and dare I say, aspire to their leadership and their model, right? Again, it is still such a lack of just simple, images of us living and breathing and doing what we do and being amazing, right? Just like your daughters. And white men and white boys need to believe in that. They need to see it just as much as our daughters do.
Yeah. Yes. Well said. But speaking about young girls of color who grow up to be the next generation of leaders of color, we know that women were hit particularly hard during this pandemic, and we also know that Black women were hit the hardest. So may I ask you, if there are any specific lessons from that book, or from, you do a lot of other talk, moments where you get to talk about how we can change the narrative. Can you pull out some specific lessons that you think that you would like either those young girls who are going to become leaders or those women in the workforce right now who can help create more space and combat what we're seeing is happening right now.
Yeah, thanks for acknowledging that, right? We are seeing record numbers of women leaving the workforce simply because our society is not built for them to achieve and to be able to do all the things that we do, including balancing home with personal life and all the other things, that the burdens that we all carry, disproportionately carry in our families and society. And as you said, Black women and women of color have been hardest hit, and it is a crisis. And I'm thankful that we're talking about it. I have to say, though, just to zoom out, that again, I'm so thankful to be having these conversations. They are still critical. Unfortunately, they are still critical and urgent. But Alice, I'm so tired. I'm so tired of having this conversation. You asked me for my advice. It's like, it is actually really simple. This is not rocket science. It is a question of, do you have a commitment to this or not? And I have to acknowledge that, last summer, coming out of, the BLM protests after the tragic murder of George Floyd, you saw lots of corporate leaders and others step up and make commitments. And, we are a little over a year from that moment. And a lot of people have walked back their commitments. They have forgotten about their commitments. They've diluted them. And I just want to remind people that the work has not ended. And my sort of most cynical view is maybe you weren't committed to it in the first place. And we need to hold people accountable to make sure that you are, making good on those commitments, and that you understand that this is ongoing work. So I think that's the most important, kind of point I want to make, that this is not hard. It takes a real commitment, yes. And you have to build it in and bake it into the DNA of every single thing that you do, right? And that's what we do at Phenomenal. We bring an equity lens to every single thing that we do. And if you're not willing to, right, that's when you lose sight of it. That's when it becomes an afterthought. And that's when you don't get it right. And that's when you create systemic harm, right, that is perpetuated in the policies and practices of your business, of, the companies that you're building, right? I think this is really directed towards entrepreneurs. We have an opportunity, as do I, building a business from the ground up, to ask ourselves, is this important enough to bake it into the DNA of every single thing I do, to think about every step I take, am I getting that right? And it's hard work. It's not, well, I guess on the one hand, I said it's not hard, it's easy, it's really kind of basic, right? But yes, you got to keep it top of mind, right? It's a real commitment, it's a real mindset. And if you're willing to do that, then things will get better.